Welcome back to Inside Sources. Today I'm leading the show with a conversation on the civil service of Nigeria. Clearly, there is no great future if we don't reform the civil service. A lot depends on the civil service. And sometimes in the past, I have had a conversation with today's guest. I'd like to welcome back to Inside Sources a scientist, a retired permanent secretary, and the former Director General of the Bureau of Public Service Reforms, who is also an author. I'd like to welcome again Dr. Goke Adegoroye. Good to see you again.
Glad to be here again.
And it's a very auspicious time to come. The President has just announced the appointment of a new head of the civil service of the Federation, Mr. Abel Enito. So we're going to have, a very interesting conversation, but let's just start on a broad sense. Now, we are concerned about the future of our country, but there's no way to get to that future, that great future, without a very viral and robust civil service in place. Now, you have written quite extensively about some of these things. So, just to open the conversation, where do you think we are today in that effort to reform our civil service? Where do you think we are today?
Let me make it also a little more broad for you by rephrasing it to say, yes, Nigeria's future and good governance depend on an effective bureaucracy.
Absolutely.
Because the civil service is only a part of the bureaucracy. We have several of the other services.
True.
Which, whether from military or police or the security or whatever.
Right.
So the core civil service is what I will refer to as the elite service, because they are the ones actually that try to drive many of the other people and also set the tone and also make the rules that we try that guide the public service. Why it is important is this. The bureaucracy is the workforce of government. A president comes in with the vision of where he wants to go. But the capacity to drive that vision depends on the workforce. In several of my books, I have used anatomical parallels by saying it is the muscle that drives how fast you go. And I also use mechanical parallels by saying that it's like President Bola Tinubu, a man with great vision. You've seen all the things that he wanted to do and so on. Let's bring it down. I said, it's like somebody who says, oh, I want to move a fuel tanker from the Atlantic Cove in Lagos to Maiduguri. And he gives the directive. And then he suddenly finds out that the engine in that tanker is that of a Volkswagen. Not just even of a Volkswagen. Somebody has found out that it's even not a genuine engine.
Wow.
How far can it go?
Wow.
It will move, but how far can it go? When you now play that back with what we have about the Nigerian bureaucracy, and some of the things that have come out in the last 2 months to let the whole public really see, are we really this bad? It will then give credence to what I've been talking about. When I came here last time, we were talking about my book, Leadership in the Nigerian Civil Service, where I was putting a lot of the fault at the foot of the leadership of the service. But talking about the quality, the questionable quality of the bureaucracy, I didn't start in 2025 when this book was written. It started in 2015. I spent 5 years after I retired, 2010, to say, what is going on? When I briefed President Yar'Adua in 2007 on the state of the reforms, what I stressed was integrity, that if we can just ensure that we allow integrity to be the driving force of all the processes of appointment, deployment, training, anything that you are doing in the service, that 80% of our problem will have been solved. Okay? But then, by 2010, after I retired, I started working. I now realized that it was so weak all over the place.
That is a matter of integrity.
No, not just integrity now. Even the capacity of the service is weak. On pages 67 to 74 here, you will see that I'm talking about the quality question of the directors and permanent secretaries in the service. It says here, the pervading poor quality perception of federal permanent secretaries, directors, and directors general. And then again, when it comes to the permanent secretary, I dwelled more into it again, the factors that are responsible, how you can resolve the classification of PAMSEC as permanent secretary, the implication of the hijack of the presidential responsibility. It is the president to appoint, but he delegates the powers to successive heads of service, but those ones introduce their own personal biases and all kinds of things. If you talk to civil servants who have attended the exam, what you will hear will be a little bit so horrendous. And I talk about a proposed structural, solution to that quality gap. Okay, this was 2015. So when I was writing my letter to the president, my open letter, because it was not easy either for the Association of Retired Federal Permanent Secretaries and Head of Service under the leadership of Yali Ahmed for us to meet with him personally. When we made the efforts, he delegated it to the secretary to the government. So
you had a meeting with the secretary to the government?
Yeah, we had a meeting to the secretary to the government. But again, as you find in my book, I also identify several structural coordinating gaps in the bureaucracy of that office. As you know, the president wears 4 titles. He's president, he's head of state, he's commander-in-chief of the armed forces, he's also the chief executive of the federation. The chief executive of the federation makes him the #1 bureaucrat because he's actually working for the Nigerian people. So as the #1 bureaucrat, he's the grand patron of the Council of Retired Federal Permanent Secretaries, Head of Service, and so on, of which Chief Asiodu is currently the chief patron, and Yali Ahmed is the chairman. I am also in the executive as the publicity secretary. So we wanted to meet him and also, tell him certain things, but, he directed the SGF to receive us on his behalf.
When was this?
At another time. That was shortly after he came in. Because we also had what we call our own blueprint of some advice we wanted to give. Later on again, he also did that. But as you will found out, yes, the head of service, the SGF is also part of his office. But as you found in my book, I also identified gaps in the capacity, the bureaucratic capacity of the office of the SGF, just as I also identify gaps in the bureaucratic capacity of even the inner ring of the president within the office of the chief of staff. Those are all the bureaucracy. So when you're actually talking, what has played out in the last 2 months, notwithstanding the fact that the head of service went and admitted that, yes, she took responsibility, but we all know that all those areas also had shared in that. And
we're talking specifically about the fake presidential...
fake presidential, whatever, They all share, all those 3 offices, shared in the weakness.
Which is head of service, secretary of the Federation, and the chief of staff.
And the office of the chief of staff. The bureaucracy in those offices are not strong enough to be able to help the president drive the vision at the speed and with the efficiency that he wants.
But even, I see your point, but even that, the exposure of that fake presidential agency is not just even about what you said, but it's also a major lapse to say that somebody can actually come into the system, get in on the budget, get offices and all of that, tie that for us, Dr. Adegroye, to the issue of the problems and the challenges of the civil service. Can you tie it for us?
Yeah, what we're saying is that...
What it would seem, according to Mr. Adeyemi, the fake DG, is that, hey, he paid money to somebody to get the appointment, and he got the appointment. What should the civil service have done that they didn't do that made this thing to happen?
The Adeyemi case is a case of where you see the interaction between the political office holders appointed and also the bureaucracy. The political office holders are principals to the bureaucracy. And a lot of times, the bureaucracy takes directive
from them.
And you need a bureaucracy that is not just professional, that, the capacity, and the commitment to the system is also driven by his own or her own personal integrity.
That's individuals.
Yes, individuals. When that is happening, they are able to withstand what is coming that may be unlawful from their principles. That is where the bureaucracy comes in. Let me tell you, the point that we're saying is this. The president, as commander-in-chief of the armed forces, does not need to know how to fire a gun. But he does have the confidence that when he sends when he declares war, that
the folks will get the job done.
Will get it done. It's the same kind of expectation the president expects, that when he's doing anything about policy, about implementation or whatever, he's expecting the kind of commitment from the bureaucracy to be able to discharge those things with thorough efficiency and effectiveness. But what we found is that you find a situation where I'm not so sure whether we can even put our capacity at up to 50%. There are a lot of gaps there, and which some of them I shared with you personally before, and which you'll be able to talk to here. And that actually will dovetail into the appointment that he just made now, which is
the appointment of the new head of service. And I'm going to get to that, but I wanted to follow up something that you said.
Yeah.
So this Adeyemi scandal situation couldn't have been possible except a principal political appointee gave an instruction that the civil servant ought to have said no. Is that your summary?
That is what it is, because whether the person brings fake or whatever, you as the civil servant you are trained to be able to detect what should be a genuine communication from the State House. You work in that system.
Yeah.
We know the State House something.
Yeah.
When the president approves anything,
yeah,
he always minutes to about 3 people.
Yeah.
Okay, it goes chief of staff, it goes to SGF, and if it has something to do with civil service,
it goes to the
head of service will have it. So that chain will let you know that it cannot loop, and
so that they at least they know what is going on.
Yes.
And they can say they can flag when they have to.
Yes. Let me give you one. Let me give you one example. When I was permanent secretary Interior, there was a situation where a governor that was close to the president said that he's been given approval to be given a diplomatic passport.
Okay.
And the then Controller General of Immigration, we discussed it. So he had to find a way to be able to manage it. This person is no more governor. How can you give?
He's a former governor.
He's a former governor. How can you give that?
How can you give such a person
exactly
diplomatic
so
passport?
When the approval was made, approval was sent to the various channels and so on. And then this former governor, brought the paper to Ude, the Controller General. And Ude, being an experienced civil servant, didn't just take action. He said, "Oh, wait, please. I will need to be able to cross-check." And he went straight to go and see the original approval. He saw the original approval and realized that truly there was an approval. But then he sought audience to be able to advise the president that on what basis are we going to grant this? He's no more serving. How can we give diplomatic? Sorry, please, we cancel it. So, and he just went back and told that one, unless you can bring me the original, I will not be able to treat it.
You're talking of President Yaradua.
Yes. So, and he now just told the former governor, unless I can see the original, I will not be able to give you this diplomatic passport. And that's how the whole thing ended. Okay? So that is somebody using the experience of the system to ensure that you are not outplayed.
You're not,
so we would have expected that on a simple phone call, when I was working in the office of a Kaite as Secretary to Government, I could pick a phone, call any minister, call this, whatever. It's just a phone call from the office of whoever to say, Chief of Staff, is this true? this is this, I mean, you know, and that would have actually corrected
very,
it.
very, very important point, you know, and hopefully we come back to that issue, you know, because I wanted to hear what you have to say about the fact that the head of civil service of the Federation took responsibility, what that meant. But let's talk about the new person that has been appointed on Wednesday. The announcement was made, and I think he's going to be resuming next week. I think August 27th, which is the time that the outgoing is going to be retiring. What's your initial take on the appointment of Mr. Abel Enito as the new head of service of the Federation?
It was a sign of relief for me because, one, Enito is not just the most senior. He is
among the peers.
Among the peers. He's actually number one right now among the Perm 6. He is also from the administrative cadre, so somebody who has some experience. But beyond that, also, is the fact that he's also one of the most capable. He has been one of the pillars to the last two heads of service. But there's another part to the story too that people don't know. They list to you places where he had worked.
Yeah.
To include environment where I had worked before, to include aviation, to include humanitarian affairs.
Yes, yeah.
Nigerians should remember that in some of those places, their ministers have got into trouble and not Enito. Aviation, Hadi Surika, humanitarian. Exactly.
This lady, Beta.
Exactly.
Edu.
That should tell you something. In those places, what I found out was that he gave advice that was shunned by those people, but he ensured that his hand was not in any of those things.
Interesting, very interesting.
So that
point.
already sends signal, okay, to people that he is somebody of integrity. But let me also tell you that, you know, the challenge in my letter is that I told you that...
That's the open letter.
The open letter to the president. Is that I told you that I've been analyzing this thing and I realized that everything has been going down since 2015. If I say certain things were, I mean, that the quality of the leadership, permanent secretaries and directors, were already going down in 2015. And then the president appointed somebody in 2015 to become head of service. That means he's trying to pick one of the good ones among the people that I say were poor.
Yeah.
You understand?
I do. Follow.
So, you know, and that's how the whole thing has been going down ever since. So, invariably, we are saying that, I mean, and when you Google, you can just there now, you can just Google and say, directors failed PAMSEC exam. You will be shocked. What will tell you? Yeah. They themselves announced over the years, succeeding head of service, right, from Shadi to the current, right, enter they do exam. And then you just scan it. Oh, they did the exam, 68 out of 80 failed the exam, couldn't get 50. Yeah. That tells you how bad it is. So, and yet you still choose PAMSEC. I even heard story, I don't know, allegation that sometimes just to be able to fulfill righteousness, they even have to buffer up the marks.
But what do you think they should have done in that kind of situation?
What they should have done in that situation is to let the president know the truth. Let the president know the truth, because I also prescribed here what should have been done. What the president could have done is to say, okay, after all, the permanent secretaries is continuous service. Let us look at directors or permanent secretaries, directors and permanent secretaries that retire within the last few years that are outstanding. Let us recall them and infuse them into the system.
Okay, as a stopgap.
As stopgap.
To bring relief.
Exactly. You know, it's like a Marshall Plan for a 2-year period. Get like about 6 of of them. I mean, from directors that are sound directors that retired in the last 2, 3, 4 years, and then also the PS. Infuse them into that system strategically. They will be able to now, interact with these other people and be able to mentor. Another thing that I also prescribed here in my book in 2015 is that it was the right time for us to have now created a stopgap position of deputy permanent secretary. That would be like a director general. I mean, that is a coordinating director coordinating about 3 departments. within a ministry. Maybe the mandate department, the service departments, and so on. Earning salaries of DGs and so on. Okay? And so that when you have those ones, you will be able to have about 120 of them, across MDAs.
To choose from.
And it is from those ones will now gain after about 2-year period. You will pick those. It's not by those kind of exams. Taking the exam is the lowest rung of the ladder of trying to get competence of people assessed. So if they had been able to apply that, we would have done it. And you know what? In 2016, when Philip Asiodu led us to General Buhari, he suggested almost something in that direction. He said, Mr. President, you say you have all this, your agenda, whatever. Why don't you let me, let's assess and get about 100 directors that are the best in the system. Put them in the core areas where you want movement, and that will be help. The head of service then was there, but that thing didn't move up. It didn't move from that conversation. So what we are saying is that there are several platforms we can use to actually build leadership. Okay. And you build it both by hands-on experience and also institutional memory that is preserved. Okay, I mean, very, very interesting conversation. And to add that, I also I know the Mr. Abel Enitan very well, because he also worked in the office of the vice president. That's true. At the time when I was media advisor to the vice president, and you could tell clearly that this was a man of excellence. Outstanding among other civil service. I think he was a director or assistant director at that point. But my concern now is that so we've had quite a lot of very encouraging comments after his appointment, but it turns out that he has just a few months to his retirement. How much do you think he can achieve, within the time? Or, should we encourage the president to kind of extend his stay just so we can get an heads up on this issue of reform, since many people think that he's a capable guy who can get this thing done? Well, there are two or more ways that the president can look at the situation. Indeed, when I heard the announcement yesterday and some people asked me, my reply to many people is that I believe that the president is appointing him with a view to allowing the president to look at various options comprehensively so that he can now make decisions about going forward. People talk about extension of service. It's part of the things that I've written in this book, that it is the misapplication of the tenure policy. Misapplication of the tenure policy, and I went to even indict the former head of service, that the former head of service that is appeared... That's the outgoing one? No, the former. The former. That it appeared that the president was not properly advised in a way to know how tenure should be applied. Why did I say that? I was the brain box for the tenure policy. The whole story is here, but it was under Oronsaye and President Yaradua. And I've said here how it is being wrongly applied. The tenure policy says you spend 8 years, but that's maximum 8 years is what you can spend as PS. At the level of PS. But then you have somebody who, you say, but you are supposed to spend, by the rule, you're supposed to spend 4 years and renewable. When you go to check the records, I may be wrong, but I've not found a time when anybody has been dropped. Everybody who spent 4 years and had more years to go have been allowed to go to it. So that's number one. Number two, you cannot be implementing tenure policy and also be implementing age of retirement. They are two different parts. Interesting. So is the tenure meant to trump? That is why I have written several times that tenure is instrument of political appointment. 60 years of age or 35 years of service is the procedure for career appointment. So technically speaking, what the president should have been doing, if they had advised president properly, is that when you appoint somebody, you give a tenure. Is it 3 years? Is it 4 years? That's the tenure that they give you. And then you serve it. But what has been happening is that successful head of service have been trying to make it co-terminate with that. So when you look, I'm not trying to be, I'm just using just for the conversation so that we can understand.
Yeah.
The immediate past head of service, when you look at the number of years from PAMSEC to the end as head of service, how many years did you count? From 2012 to 2024. Okay. So that ends up to be about a little over 12 years. Okay. 5 of those 12 years were actually as head of service from 2019 to 2024. So ideally, if the president had been advised, the president would have said, oh, you became in 2019, 4 years later, maybe 2023, maybe that's the time that I should have allowed that to go, and then you appoint somebody else. So 2 things here. I will be glad if we look at it more in terms of tenure. That's number 1. But then the other thing is that I also know the person who is being appointed is somebody who will try to say, unless this is the rule, there's no way he want to go beyond the rule, beyond the rule of age of retirement. So those are the conversations we need to do. But so what I'm expecting is that within the 12 months, he will be, within the 4 months, he will be able to interact with those of us who are elders, especially the Council of Retired Federal Permanent Secretaries, to be able to get a full blueprint for the president as to how to move the service forward. The blueprint will include some of the things that I've said now. Okay, set up committee to review the tenure policy, how you implement it. Set up committee how to be able to improve the competence of the service and build leadership. Okay, and so that whatever is there, he can be able to put to the president, and president will now be able to implement that. If he's able to just do that, that will actually go back, go very far. I told somebody, I said, Shonagon was a president for 87 days. 87 exactly. So a lot can be done, and within that period, to at least open the minds of the president to what is available. Some people have also talked, I said, oh, it's because it's from this region, from that region. Again, in my writing, so many years, I've said it. It's here, and it's also in this book, that it has been, the error was made during Obasanjo regime in 1999 to be using office of head of service to politically balance the one of the SGF. And I've argued repeatedly
that wasn't necessary.
It wasn't necessary. You should allow it to evolve the same way it is in the judiciary. We had a time in the judiciary that both the Senate president and the head of judiciary were from Benue State. Okay, but nobody can question because judiciary is by seniority. So for us in the service, let it evolve by seniority. Only if you find the person not competent or whatever, then you bypass and take somebody else.
Who is competent.
So that it doesn't matter where the person is.
Okay, all right. So I want to get the summary of your argument on the tenure policy. Just so I understand what you're saying and our viewers are also following. So you are saying that when the tenure policy is properly implemented, it is a trump. It trumps the age of retirement. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
So in which case, if the president adopts that understanding, somebody might have a few months to go to their retirement, but the president can say that, okay, even though you have a few months, I'm appointing you to this tenure of 2, 3, 4 years, and the retirement age doesn't become a problem. That's what you're saying.
Sure.
Okay.
It happened in Malaysia. That's how they brought the secretary to the cabinet. Okay, he also was brought back.
Okay, but how do you then, and by the way, I think that would be an excellent option here, knowing this particular appointee of the president very well. But how do you avoid the controversies of people, because I remember, for instance, the president had done something like that for the Inspector General of Police, Dr. Egbetokun, who just left, and there were a lot of that. I think some people even went to court to say that, no, the retirement age, and they were quoting the act. So how can you solve that problem, for somebody who is trying to say that, look, I don't want trouble, let's just, do you understand what I'm saying? The perception, how can that be managed?
First, one of the way out is this. We could say, okay, we are now making it clear. You set up a new committee to see how you actually implement the tenure policy. And we set it as a broad perspective. And then when it is done, it's up to the person who is there now to say, I don't want to be the beneficiary of this. Let it be somebody else. And then we will now know what to do. But then when you look at what I spoke out earlier, that the president is even at liberty to bring people from retirement.
Yeah.
Okay? So suppose he brings somebody from retirement as PAMSEC, and from them, appoint that person as head of service.
Right.
It's also well and good. Okay? As long as those are people who are still able and agile and below 65 years of age.
Yeah.
The key thing we are talking about here is that the competence and experience that we try to preserve in the system should not be thrown out on the altar of all these kind of considerations. We have spent too many years in Nigeria just looking at appointments in terms of goodies or cakes that you share. But look at it in terms of who can actually bring value. I just giving you an example now of this person that I felt so relieved. Because when I wrote my letter, somebody jokingly just told me, somebody who, just say, suppose you are asked to recommend people, who will you recommend?
Okay.
And I look at their data, I call the people who can give me the data of the PAMSECs, and I did some little bit of questionnaire, and people brought returns for me. And I was able to get the top 5. Yes. And incidentally, he was number 1. But the reason I didn't put him also is that because I said, oh, this one is going 4 months, but he's actually the strongest candidate, among them. Okay.
And it turns out that that's what the president has also done.
If the president has done it, because what the president has done is that he's trying to show somebody, listen, if you take any kind of opinion poll within the civil service, other than this idea of 4 months, most people will tell you that that's actually the best candidate. But the other thing is this, because we have this challenge now, to which we really need to declare either an emergency or a Marshall Plan, we need someone like that, whether it's him or it's somebody you are bringing from outside, we need somebody to be able to now say, let us now draw a plan how we can resolve this thing, so that within 2 years we can actually come with a more viral bureaucracy
for the country.
Across. I mean across, not just the civil service that constitutes only about 10%, but across also the parastatals, where you have a lot of directors, general, that are doing all sorts of things without even knowing the rules, and they don't want to obey. And it's becoming a challenge for the system.
Yeah, and that's a very important point that you've raised, because, most of the time people don't know that the public service is different from the civil service. So you said that the civil service is just 10% of
less than 10%, actually.
Interesting. I didn't even know that.
It's only those that are appointed by the Civil Service Commission. And when you look at the current population, it's probably at best about 140,000.
Interesting.
Out of about 2 million.
Interesting. Okay. Before we go to the issue of the capacity, welfare, and delivery of the civil service today and what ought to be done, I wanted to call your attention to the fact that, a former head of service had referred to some of your comments to say that maybe you have preference for people in the administration cadre, because there is this tension in the civil service between the administration cadre and the non-administration cadre, which is the professional cadre. For the benefit of our audience, it means that people who are professionals, like doctors and lawyers, accountants, and all of that, they are deemed to be professional cadre, where the people who are in administration are generalists. So they are the ones that are trained and have the experience to manage and therefore lead. But there's this tension. Professionals say that we too can lead. As a matter of fact, I think President Buhari then appointed Mrs. Yemi Esan as who is a professional, as head of service. So I wanted to explain to us, because a former head of service said that that you are critical of her, in your book, and maybe it's because of this. I wanted to clarify that, Dr. Adegroyi.
Oh, now that you put the gender, I can now remember, because I was wondering that former heads of service, like all of them, were supporting me. Okay, now that you put the gender, it actually pains me because as I put in my book, it's one of the ones that I really brought out my head to try and support. The case is not a case of professional versus, admin cadre.
Okay.
It's a case of the ability to gain experience in management and administration, and then to bring your own personal integrity to bear on your work in such a way that they can see what you are bringing in.
Okay.
And what pains me in that individual you were talking about, in fact, I sent somebody to represent me at the book launch and they gave me a copy. And when I read, I was a bit downcast. And my wife said, "Oh, what's wrong with you?"
But you didn't mention your name at least.
No, they didn't mention my name. They just said PalmSec, and they said the PalmSec now wrote another book where he was saying that he was a dentist.
Yeah.
I felt bad because, number one, I didn't say anything about dentists in 2012. I only said it about this time. I felt bad because I said, this person was somebody that I relayed the encounter in this book, that I was invited to give some kind of facilitation lecture to new permanent secretaries. And in my usual way, I start with my letter of invitation.
Okay.
And the letter of invitation signed by that individual was signed as head of service of the Federation. And I now pointed, because I used that to easily train the other people. And I pointed, I said, well, you know that this is not your title. Because when you say head of service, which service? There are several services.
Like you said, so there's paramilitary, there's
intelligence
military,
services,
there's police,
and so on and
intelligence.
So on. That your service, that your title is as prescribed in the Constitution.
Which is head of
the civil service of the Federation. Okay? And the individual reported to me, he said, "Oh, sir, I mean, she respects me, very nice lady and so on." He said, "Sir, but you know that in the States, all they are using now is they are using head of service." So they have again, my body was shivering, but I controlled myself. I said, but the states don't have any other service other than civil. So they can abbreviate their own.
To head of
service. In the federal, you have security, you have police, you have paramilitary, there are whatever. That is why you cannot take dictation from the state.
As a matter of fact, you are supposed to be the
one to guide them. So I say that, and I place this encounter here so that people can learn. Now, that's what actually made me. I found out that the book that was released last week is still mixing up the thing. In some places, the individual call herself head of service of the Federation. In another place, head of civil service. In another place, head of the civil service. Even that kind of tardiness. Okay? So I was feeling bad that if this thing caused friction between me and you 7 years ago, and in 2019, and now you are writing a book, you still in a permanent record, not in a colloquial conversation. Yes. Writing a book and you put it there. I felt so bad. It's like I was a failure for even trying to correct. But it also tells you a lot that that's the person that was a leader to choose some other people, and it tells you how the whole thing is going. I feel bad that I have to say this.
It makes the argument about people who have experience in administration. It makes it stronger, without trying to say that people who are in the profession shouldn't lead. But I guess, and I'm sure that you've mentioned this in your book also, in your previous conversation, that what needs to happen is then for the professionals to also have some training.
Exactly. And that's the point that one of my colleagues, Dr. Timi Agari, actually wrote, that she was a professional minister of Science and Tech, but because of the way she was working, she was exposed to, going to drafting papers and so on, that every time they are doing those things, they bring her in.
Yeah, you are a scientist yourself.
And I was a scientist myself. You saw the places that I worked.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and when you look at today, in the Ministry of Labor, the most outstanding permanent secretary was Dr. Timi Agari. He's a professional. And as I told you, here was Oronsaye. Okay. He gained all the experience before becoming. But you cannot compare Oronsaye's experience with the person who was made permanent secretary by Buhari who was made head of service by Buhari in 2015. Somebody that within just 5 years rose from deputy director to head of service. I mean, it's not, there's a limit to how much.
There wasn't sufficient time and experience.
Exactly, to be able to gain. And those kind of things actually showed. She tried her best, really tried her best, but some of those things really, showed within the system. But do you know the tragedy of that that appointment was that while Buhari made somebody who was from the lower half of the the head of service, a mistake was also made. Let me say, I don't know why they probably had their reason. Virtually all the senior ones were retired.
Wow.
Those were the senior ones who would have brought stability, that would have helped. Because among the senior ones, even if you are talking about zonal distribution that you want it from South-South, there are people like Linus Awute from Rivers. There was people like Ambassador Igali who were senior. If those ones were not removed from the system, maybe at least they could still be guiding this person. But because those were removed, you now brought new people. Okay, they had to fill their gap by new people. Right. New people means new people that need training. Yeah. And the experience had already gone. Okay. So that 2015 Act created a lot of challenge for the system. You could say also that the act that happened during Oronsaye, when we introduced Tenure, also, did the same thing. But those are people who had already spent more than 10 years as permanent secretaries. Right. And the people that they were replaced with were seasoned directors. Some of them had even spent 13 years as directors who are now made permanent secretaries during that time. People like the current emir of Katagun, Baba Farouk. Okay. He had been director for more than 10 years. So also was Dr. Olorunfemi. So those are they are experienced people that replaced them. Yeah.
So I wanted to also ask you, so in view of all of this, do you think that we should extend the retirement age from 60 to 65? Because, you guys, and I understand that it's not just you, your group of retired permanent secretary, they're trying to say that, look, we can even bring old people to come and help because, like you said even earlier, it's like an emergency. Will it be worthwhile then to actually say that when we are able to sort this thing out, should we extend the retirement age? I wanted to ask you that question.
No. I say it emphatically again, no.
Okay.
Nigeria is a youth country. The average population is 18.6. You cannot increase retirement age when you have youths that need to come in.
A youth board, that's true.
Between me and you, what they did in education and they're doing it, I don't support it.
Which is
increasing the retirement age to 65.
Okay, so that you can have teachers. For the university teachers and
exactly. Yeah. I don't support it. I came from the university system. I'd already spent 15 years in the university system before I came into the federal service. Agency service. Okay. And at 60, I left. And I had my time to be able to enjoy myself, to take care of my health and so on.
But now we are needing to bring people like you to come and help sort out the problem.
Those are very few people. Compare, rather than a policy, you are bringing, suppose for the federal service, maybe you end up bringing maximum 20. Okay? That it's like you are bringing them in to actually breathe some kind of maturity and training to the system. Okay? And in this kind of case, for permanent secretaries anyway, it's like continuous service. That's what we say. Because, it's the same thing, the same salary that I get in retirement. Yeah. So it's like a sacrifice that we can make. Right. And for the directors, you are helping. So that's a magic. So bring in 20 people, maybe 10 directors and 10 perm sec to infuse into the system. It's not the same as saying you are increasing retirement age. Exactly.
Good point. Good point. But I wanted to ask you, in my view, there are three major problems, and this is the last question, that I've seen in the civil service as a problem of capacity, in terms of, do these people even are they able to deliver? There's also, of course, the problem of delivery, which has been quite troublesome. But in my view, the welfare, the pay, seems to be, in my view, to be one of the more compelling things that we need to sort out if we really. Now, I'll give an example that you are very familiar with. In places like the United Kingdom, they bring their best people from Cambridge and Oxford. They are the people that end up in the civil service. That's the best institutions. And they are able to keep them in the system because they are well paid. What's your own take, in terms of the reform in the area, specifically in the area of welfare? What do you think ought to happen?
Well, don't call it welfare. Maybe you call it remuneration.
Remuneration,
yes.
Yeah.
In the area of remuneration, obviously, the civil service is being cheated. Okay? It's totally appalling that they are being paid what cannot even take them home. Maybe up till about a few years ago, you can say maybe it's a bit pardonable. Because when I retired and I went doing some consulting work for the president of Liberia and so on, and my colleagues saw me and they said, what was my salary? And I said, I'm in retirement, but my take home every month I get equivalent to about $5,000 to $6,000. They said, what? I said, yes. Because what they pay me then, because remember the exchange rate was 120 to the dollar.
Yeah.
So my 800 or something,
and then
was exactly
about 5,000.
But right now,
don't talk about it.
Right now, it's equivalent of $600.
That's what I'm saying.
So that alone has already destroyed it.
God.
But so really, that has to be overhauled. The worst part also is that even for these Perm secs, the agencies that they supervise get far more than them. You say somebody is permanent secretary petroleum. Okay, petroleum is, but go and find out what the NAPC people are getting.
Or NP, UPRC,
or you say somebody is a permanent secretary, Ministry of Finance, but go and find out what they are getting in NRS, Nigerian Revenue Service, and all the other ones. Okay, so it don't really go together. And then to make matters worse, is that the elected officers, especially those ones in National Assembly, make it almost hell for them by the kind of demands that they put on these people. So for me, if the president wants to actually carry out those reforms, these are part of the areas we need to get into. Because then when you pay people well, you will now be able to
demand
that they do good, and then secondly, sanction when they falter or they do something that is unethical.
Yeah, because they would have been, at least we have sorted out the issue of their motivation based on that. And the president has already done it for the judges, so I don't think it should be a problem. But is it one of the things that you guys, are pushing in your association of retired permanent secretary?
Well, in retired permanent secretary, we're there at the background and just even feeling that you can give us a fraction of what you give to the generals that are even below us. Retired permanent secretary, Ministry of Defense, and you find out that, what you are paying in retirement is not up to what they pay a captain. General?
Oh, wow.
Oh, seriously.
Well, that's terrible.
Exactly. So to us, it's really a bit, totally embarrassing. But we are looking at it holistically, that it's not just us alone, but we want even the system, those who are in the system, to be able to benefit. And that's what the leadership of COFEPS is actually pushing through, that yes, the remuneration needed to be looked into totally.
What's the meaning of COFEP?
Council of Retired Federal Permanent Secretaries.
Okay.
So
COFEP is saying also that the remuneration has to be looked at as a major.
Yes. Oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
Because I do think that is like they say, that's the cocoa of the matter.
Cocoa of the matter, but the COFEPs that are also we're also saying that government should do that, but then when you also find a civil servant who's engaged in any act of corruption,
of course,
must be very, very decisive.
That's important because brutal, like you said at the beginning, it's about the integrity.
The integrity of the system. So let it send signals to them, because if soldiers can go die in the war front, those of us who are in the office should be able to lay our life on the line in defending the public interest, rather than our own personal interest.
Absolutely. And fixing the remuneration is a way to start. Thank you so much, Dr. Goke Adegroye, for your views. Thank you for the brilliance of your analysis and the insight that you bring, and even the institutional memory that you try to recalibrate. And hopefully, now that we have the new head of the civil service, is somebody that, a lot of people have expressed confidence. I hope that the COFEM will be able to support him with a ready-made blueprint to help us reform the civil service, hopefully.
I promise you, I will hold him to the leadership of COFEPS.
A man of integrity and very competent and also very humble. Once again, thank you for coming to Inside Sources.
Glad to be with you.
All right, sir. Now, so that's my first segment. I'm going to start a second discussion today around issue of subsidy and energy security. But that conversation is only going to start today, and we continue and conclude it in the next edition of Inside Sources on Sunday. Inside Sources will be right back.